Tick, 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 boom. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have just found your favorite podcast and YouTube show. Welcome to you all to the Meltdown. My name's Tom Finkill, and we are joined by the reason you are all here, ladies and gentlemen. Some may know him as the Night Stalker. You may know him as Adam Bomb Wrath. He's the creation of devastation. And if you guys stick around, you are in serious joy of some high times. Ladies and gentlemen, Bryan Clark. Woo!
Thank you for having me, Tom. This is the beginning of an epic series, no doubt about it, man. The U.S. and the U.K. once again connecting to, if you will, some mega powers right here on the YouTube universe. We are ready.
I feel like I need to put my hands straight through that screen in the Hogan Savage connection and shake it with as much force of a macho man. It's going to be an incredible series. And yes, this is our very first show. This is our debut show. So whether or not you're checking us out on YouTube, where you can actually see us interact with the videos that you guys are going to watch along with us, or if you're listening to us in your cars, chilling out, welcome. This is the Meltdown, and the origin of this show, the genesis of this show, was to try and think of something new, because in the UK, the WWE network has now come to an end. It was a sad day for us on January the 1st, as all that classic content went off into the ether, and then about 4 weeks later, the WWE brought us back with the incarnation of their WWE Vault and WCW Channels on YouTube. On there, you now get to experience some truly incredible shows from the past leading up to present day. And our basis of our show is going to be to take you guys on a journey with us as we revisit some incredible shows of the past, by including some of the characters that lived it. And here are your co-hosts. Yes, myself and Bryan are in it for the long haul. We're going to bring the Meltdown to you guys. And just like the name says, we want you to melt into your favorite armchair as we give you the lowdown on some incredible shows of the past. And we're going to dive into WCW first, right, Bryan? We've got a big one.
Absolutely, man. This is actually an interesting show. There's so many layers to this actual episode of Thunder, rolling out of Lexington, Kentucky, at the Rupp Arena. So yeah, man, this is going to be good. There's always a lot of nuggets that we're going to be finding throughout this whole journey. So yeah, I'm looking forward to actually going back and revisiting this and recalling some things that people may not even know about, but they're going to find out.
That's what we want to hear. Beautiful. And for all you Jericho fans out there, this is the one. This is the true epitome of Jerichoholicism. Is that even a word, Jerichoholicism? Let's go for it. It's Chris Jericho versus Wrath for the WCW television title on this particular show, with some interesting features at the end. Yes, we're going to find out how well TBS's production did with these two legends. Let me paint a picture for you guys exactly what's going on. It is the early fall of 1998. Things are hot on both sides of the fence. The WWF have just come off one of the biggest shows of the summer with SummerSlam. It's Austin versus Taker. The WCW crew have just brought in Warrior, who we are definitely going to be touching upon later on. They're building up for their big fall brawl show. And interestingly enough, the Monday Night Wars are hot to trot right now at this particular time. And WCW have regained the lead. It's an interesting time. They've got a brand new show called Thunder that debuted in the January. We're now in the September. This is episode 31. And what we want you guys to do is we want you to join us on the journey. So if you're viewing us on YouTube, I'm going to count you down and you're going to click play at exactly the same time for a good old watch along so you can see exactly what we're talking about all the way through. If you're listening to us via podcast, load up your favorite YouTube device and bob in WCW into your Google machine, into your YouTube shout, and find the episode. WCW Thunder, September 10th, 1998. Goldberg crushes the competition is the title. Load it all up. Get yourselves set back to zero. Bryan, do you want to give us a countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and play? And we're going to press play together. Make sure you got mute on all sides. We're going to chat it out. Give us a countdown, big man.
All right, we are ready. Now, Rupp Arena, like we said, been there many times. The crowd is always electric, red hot. So let's get ready with a 4, nuclear 3, 2, 1, liftoff. Here we go.
The play button is pressed and we see the openings to a classic Thunder. I don't know why we're focusing on Hollywood right now because we're in Lexington, Kentucky, but it's a big one, and we're about to see you. There you go, right there on the shoulders of Lex Luger, our brand new Hall of Famer. It's WrestleMania week, guys. Shall we send out a big shout out to the total package?
Absolutely. Congratulations, Lex, man. I'm glad you made it in Hall of Fame. Very well deserved. And on that same note, my good friend Fred Ottman, one half of the Natural Disasters, another good buddy of mine, is going into the Hall of Fame. Big congrats to both of you guys.
It is going to be an epic night on Friday as lots of wonderful talent take their rightful place in the Hall of Fame. Triple H is going to be captaining that ship with Michelle McCool, Lex Luger, the Natural Disasters, and for the very first time ever, we have got an iconic match going into the WWE Hall of Fame from WrestleMania 13. It's Bret the Hitman Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Do you remember watching that match, Bryan?
I'm going to tell you, that was absolutely an iconic match. Think about the bloodbath that turned out to be. Yeah, you expected some blood, but not as much as Austin delivered that night. Great, one of the all-time great matches, no doubt.
They are truly legendary, and for the very first time ever, the WWE is inducting an iconic match. And what more could you ask for? Well, speaking of icons, speaking of Hall of Famers, right now we're looking at Bobby the Brain Heenan. We're looking at Tony Schiavone. We're looking at Tony the Tiger himself, Stagger Lee Marshall. What a lineup that is.
You know, I like this, man. I've always liked Thunder. I've always been a fan of Thunder. I enjoyed being on Thunder when I was booked there. I was like, man, it has a different vibe than the Monday show. Even though it would be considered the B show, a lot of times it was not. It was really packed at times. And again, that commentary team, great. Yeah, there's some legendary commentators who have graced us. But I've been always, of course, a huge fan of Bobby Heenan, who was actually did the play-by-play on my very first match in WWF. So big fan of Bobby and, of course, Tony.
That's a great little nugget. That is a trivia question. That's a pub quiz question. I love that.
I got a lot of those.
Yes, well, we're going to keep them rolling over the course of the Meltdown. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this. And I always like to ask the question as to who would be your Mount Rushmore when it comes to various different people, whether it be male wrestlers, whether it be female wrestlers, managers, announcers. So from your experience, who would you put as your top 4, your Mount Rushmore of announcers in professional wrestling?
Honestly,
pick
some
four.
of the people that I would think of, and I was blessed to have these guys, honestly, to call my matches. But I would go with Gorilla Monsoon,
Good
Bobby
shout.
the Brain Heenan, Tony Schiavone, and then of course Michael Cole. If I had to pick someone currently, that would be my four. And there are many that are as good, if not better, maybe more deserving. But my personal opinion, that's who I would go with.
That's a great line. Honestly, it's very, very similar to my own lineup. And having Michael Cole in there, I think he's made the complete U-turn as of late.
Oh yeah.
And the fans have really embraced him. I think it's the Pat McAfee lineup. I think Pat's really reignited his passion for the industry. And I think he now really does deserve that spot in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Well, on Mount Rushmore even. Well, speaking of Hall of Fame and Mount Rushmore, right now we're looking at Hollywood Hulk Hogan, the man who is more tanned than anyone in the entire world. Yes. My goodness, he popped on screen, didn't he? The NWO have just made their way to the ring. And you got some big names in there with Hollywood. We've got the likes of your boss, Eric Bischoff, Kurt Hennig, my very own favorite, Mr. Perfect. I'm looking at the screen right now as Buff's just taking a little stroll on there with the Disciple, Vincent, and Stevie Ray. But let's have a little chat about the NWO.
Sure.
We've got the NWO Hollywood that we're looking at right now. And they're in a fierce conflict with the NWO Wolfpack. It's the black and white versus the red and black. From a talent's perspective, do you think that the NWO should have been split?
Well, I think eventually it would happen. You know, I think actually could have gotten a little longer run out of it. But yeah, I think it would have happened sooner or later. Just because there was just so much talent in the black and white. And speaking of which, I did rock the black and white for this special edition, episode number 1, and many more to come. But I had to represent a little bit, even though I wasn't in there.
Oh, I wasn't in there. We nearly had it right now.
You know, I almost kind of got there, but again, yeah, Hogan with the great tan. It goes to show that living on Tampa Bay on the beach, it just goes to show that, yeah, suntan is paying off.
Were talent lobbying to get themselves into that particular group? Did you ever see that backstage where certain individuals were constantly pushing to be a part of that group? And the reason why I'm saying that is I'm looking straight down the line at Brutus Beefcake right now.
Yeah. It's hard to say, you know, what happens with closed doors at the time with some of the NWO members, and then possibly it seems like that everyone was pretty well recruited in the group, but there were a few that you're like, this is not a fit, and that happened a few times. For example, as I'm watching here, this sticks out the most, or the two that stick out the most to me are right away is Beefcake and Virgil, or Vincent, excuse me. There you go. Those two really, to me, do not fit.
Absolutely.
But a Kurt Hennig, on the other hand, excellent fit.
Perfect.
There you go.
You know what I noticed that is perfect about this is the screen capture that we're looking at right now. You've got Bischoff holding the mic for Hogan central and taking advantage of every single second of airtime. You've got Beefcake and you've got Perfect. You've got Buff Bagwell in that ring. You've got Stevie Ray in the ring. They're on either side because they have been edged out by the two guys who are just going to grab as much airtime as they can. Now we've taken a wider shot right now, but look at that. They know exactly what they're doing. Absolute class act. Love Mr. Perfect. We're going to come on to Kurt Hennig a little bit later on because he's the match on this particular show against for Horsemen, Steve Mongo McMichael. While we're talking about Vincent, is he the luckiest man in professional wrestling?
Well, I think it paid off for him, because if you think of some of the positions that he just sort of fell into, timing is everything in this business, as you know, and they felt a need to have him there. And so, yeah, he fit right in actually for a while. But as it went on and the roster, as far as the NWO side of it I think that he sort of really lost steam and really was almost maybe not the spot for him. But it started out nice.
Yeah, I think from when they brought him in with Ted DiBiase, obviously you had the Virgil and $1 Million Man deal, and
Right.
it fit, everything went hand in hand. But I completely agree with you. By the end, it was just another body to be included. Loving the Ray Dunn cut, by the way. Yes, love that. Let's take a little peek, a little bit more at the NWO before we go into our next segment. I just really want to know from a road travel perspective. Did the NWO guys tend to stay more together in themselves? Was kayfabe still very much alive in '98? You tell me how they would be traveling. Would you guys all be traveling together on big coaches? Would they travel themselves independently? How was it structured?
A lot of the guys did travel together, and even though there were the sheets and the writers and stuff and giving inside bits of the information, there was still, I think, parts of kayfabe that were still alive. Um, like, for example, Hogan had the jet, and Eric and Hogan and maybe one or two others would fly, but a lot of guys would be with us on first class and flying around the world and internationally, wherever we were going. So yeah, I think there were efforts made to still maintain a certain level of kayfabe, even in '98, with all the information that was out there. Of course, more so than like nowadays, it's almost non-existent. So yeah,
Yeah. Who are you traveling with at this time?
Wrath was a little bit of a lone wolf. So, but I wasn't the only one that was a lone wolf. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
At times I've even traveled with Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, I got some classic stories of traveling with Kurt.
I want to know about those.
We'll get to those. It may be this episode, it may be the next, but I can tell some great stories that he wouldn't mind me telling. Really good stuff. Yeah, it varied though. Occasionally I would travel with different guys, and that's just the way things work out. Rarely did I have any travel partners that I just realized that, oh, this is a mistake.
Yeah. And sometimes it is that way. Sometimes you do.
It happens. It does. I mean, when you start traveling with someone and you're on the road with them, you really learn about the person because you're with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well with you, as you said, being a lone wolf, there's none of the reliability factor. So you're not having to rely on anybody else. You can deal with all your own with yourself. You can quite happily fart away in the car and no one's going to be offended. Well, speaking of being offended, we've just seen a very intensely beautiful heel in Chris Jericho grace our screens, who's going to be putting the WCW television title on the line against one very big competitor. Yes, he's on his undefeated streak, and no, we're not talking about Goldberg. He's right there. It's Bryan Clark. How good was Jericho at this time?
Chris was, I really think he did a great job, and he worked really hard on his promo skills and everything. He took every opportunity to make himself better. Mm-hmm. I was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling prior to my WWE, WWF run, and then Chris came into Smoky Mountain right after me. So I was hearing about Chris, and I'd already heard about him internationally, how well he was doing. So I can't say I was surprised. He always had really good charisma, good timing. So yeah, I think he was just a matter of time before he had his real breakout period.
He has had one of the longest tenured, successful careers in all of professional wrestling. And we're going to come and talk about Chris a lot throughout the series, and a little snippet more in one of the most unique and infamous skits in your match a little bit later on. But let's take it to the ring. We've got the WCW Cruiserweight title on the line. Juventud Guerrera is our Cruiserweight champion in the fall of 1998, going against Silver King. There's lots of luchadors on the roster right now. How would they were they very cliquish backstage? Were the luchadors fun? Could they drink a lot?
Well, they were, as the word you said, cliquish. Yeah, they really did hang together for the most part. always really professional, easy to get along with. And these guys, if you notice, when they brought them in, at least not just the luchadors, but the cruiserweights, they really a great way to open up the show and get, for example, Rupp Arena for that early pop in the show.
Speaking of early pop, we've just seen a springboard moonsault done by a man who's about 240 pounds, Silver King. What an exceptional talent. And for those of you that are keen-eyed, you'll notice that Silver King has been busted open Hardway there to the mouth. Now, at this stage of the game in WCW, there was not a lot of bloodshed. There was very little juice. So when you get something Hardway like that, is there any kind of reprimand backstage for any kind of edits? I mean, we're looking at it right now, and Silver King's doing a good job. He's got his tongue out to try and keep it away. But if there was any Hardway juice, is that something that you're going to get pulled up at backstage?
Well, I mean, for me, for example, I got 30 staples in the back of my head from a chair shot. Knocked me out completely. I woke up in the Baltimore hospital. But I mean, it was on a Thunder. The rim of the chair caught my head and laced me open. But there was blood everywhere. But what happened is that TBS, you can see Silver King there, like you said, trying to cover up the blood spot. But yeah, I mean, accidents happen, and I'm sure there was not any kind of reprimand for him getting busted open. He couldn't help that. And just like with my situation, I mean,
so just while we're on the topic, who was it that delivered that chair shot to you? I remember seeing it. I think it was a running from the crowd, and you were next to the rail, right? Who was it?
Correct.
Who was it?
Our Hall of Famer Lex Luger was reversing me. I hit the rail, and another Hall of Famer, Road Warrior Animal, caught me with the steel chair.
Let's raise a glass to Lex
and the rim of the chair is what opened me up.
My goodness.
Yeah, it was an accident. There were kids in the way, and he was having to reach over, and it was a timing issue. But yeah, like I said, there was a pool of blood everywhere. But those things you can't help it. But that's what TBS did to keep it family oriented. They would cut away from the blood.
I can't remember actually seeing you in a pool of blood, but hearing you tell the story, it does send shivers.
I've got some screenshots I'll send you one day.
Yes, send me those. We might throw them up on YouTube. You never know.
There you go.
Well, speaking of sending shivers through my spine, we have come to a promo with Tony Schiavone and James J. Dillon. My goodness, this guy could talk a glass eye to sleep. What were your impressions of JJ at this time? Was he in the right role? Should he be in on camera at this time?
I don't think it hurt. JJ had worked that type of character and persona so many years through with the Four Horsemen and everything. So I don't think it hurt, to have there's not that position is not at the time not as prominent as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Your
authority figure. Yeah,
correct. So I would say that, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. But yeah, I have to tell you this, JJ was a much better talker and a guy in a forefront position, say for example, the Horsemen, than he was a worker, because if you want to amuse yourself, go watch some JJ Dillon pro wrestling matches from, say, the 70s. You'll see why he moved to the position that he did. So I'll leave it with that.
It was an intelligent segue for one James J. Dillon. Yes,
there you go.
He very much reminds me of the type of character that Jack Tunney was in the early WWF. So keeping that personality low whilst keeping it appear very professional. He's just announced that Scott Hall is to return on the WCW 4 Brawl 98 pay-per-view to take on the NWO Wolfpack's Konnan, who we're going to see very, very soon. But right now, just before we head to the ring, we're just about on the Wrath Jericho TV title match. This is one, you guys, if you are listening on your podcast devices, make sure you check this out. This is iconic. But before we get there, We see our very own Hall of Famer Lex Luger being attacked by two more Hall of Famers, the British Bulldog and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who have just come over to WCW alongside Bret the Hitman Hart in the winter of '97, early '98. How did they fit in at the time?
I think they fit in fine. All the things that had gone down prior to the Montreal screw job, and then bringing those guys in. Davey had been there before, and I want to say Jim had been there. I'm not 100% sure about Jim, but Davey, of course, definitely.
Yeah,
Davey had the classic matches with Vader.
Yeah,
he and Davey worked all those matches with Vader. So yeah, they'd been there before. So yeah, I mean, everybody loved those guys.
Well, speaking of love, this is exactly what we need to see on our screen right now. The girls are going wild in the front row. There's a big man right there. There he is. Currently on an undefeated streak. You've been back for about a month and a half right now. Look at the legend that is Wrath. You were on such a dominant run.
Yeah, this was a really, really fun time. I had no idea that I would go on a undefeated streak of, I don't know, 6-7 months or whatever it was. I don't remember. But I had no idea that it would take off like it did, but with the creation of the Meltdown. I had worked on that prior to bringing out this persona of myself. And that's one thing I said, I've got to have a devastating new finish. And that's how the Meltdown was. I said I worked on it. It didn't just happen.
No,
I worked
and you
on
could
it.
tell,
No doubt
as
about
a fan, you could tell. It was choreographed to perfection. It was built up like the biggest move ever. And we're going to talk about the Meltdown in final detail, but let's not sway away from this, because this is the debut of the Jericho personal security. Ralphus is making his debut. We got the Jericho-holic Ninja. Hello, Lexington. We're doing the good old spinal tap. He's looking for the ring. He's got no idea where he's going. He's pulling down doors. He's hiding curtains. Tell us a little bit about Ralphus and the Jericho-holic Ninja, because this is the first spot, the first time that we've seen him on camera.
Yeah, this is gold, in my opinion. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I know that Chris actually picked these two guys out of nowhere. Little side note for Ralphus, I think his name was John. I want to say Riker, because I looked it up because I couldn't remember his last name. And he was actually a long distance like truck driver, and he drove the rings around the country.
Outside.
So of course Chris picks him out because he's missing his front teeth, he's missing his choppas, and so he picks him out, and of course cuts the shirt and takes a black Sharpie and writes the personal security across. So it's just great, man. And Ralphus would later go on to get a little bit of fame out of this, so much so that he had his own little group, his own little groupies at
his
times.
own little Ralphus rats.
I'm just saying,
if you were a Ralphus rat, please get in touch with us. We want to talk.
Yeah, exactly. We can try to send you a Meltdown t-shirt or something just for all your efforts.
Thank you for your efforts. Well, let's take a look at exactly what's going on right now. Jericho's found himself outside, and this, for me, I was watching this pack. This is some production craziness. I mean, Jericho finds himself outside to reopen the door, which is meant to be locked, and reopens the door as you're sort of sauntering your way back. You're fuming right now. It's a WCW television title match. Obviously, within storyline, you should be raging. You're going to find him. You're going to rip him a new one. Jericho's on the outside of the building, and everything should have been done within production to make sure that door stays locked. However, as you go a little bit further on, you'll notice there's about 6 doors on that wall. And Ralphus is stood with one of them open in just a second. And you're like, how does this happen? Even when you smash that door down, the door next to it is already open. How does this pass production?
We went over this pre-production. They were supposed to clean up some things in post-production. It didn't happen. It's really frustrating, very disappointing and frustrating, because when you see it and you think, okay, they're going to do this and this will be taken care of, it just, some things fell through the cracks. and those cracks seem to get bigger and bigger at times, and this is one of those times.
Yeah, I think the chase scene at the end that we've just witnessed there, you're chasing Jericho in and behind the truck. Right. And from chatting with you before, the cut was meant to come when you turn around the corner of the truck.
Correct. Yeah, because if you notice, I actually chased Chris past it. We were actually laughing a little bit at the very end where I turned on some speed, and I was joking him out, hey, I still got that college football speed kind of thing. But yeah, they were supposed to cut at least 2 seconds prior to that, and it didn't happen.
Let's raise a glass for the death of WCW right now. I think it's the time.
We got to
creating epic moments for us, WCW. Thank you so much for those.
Create and devastate all at the same time.
Indeed. And I mean, from moments like that, I mean, they unintentional, I'm sure. They live on in infamy. They give us something to talk about, and they will live on forever. So we will hold that dearly in our hearts. Speaking of holding something dearly in our hearts, I want to bring the volume up right now. Have you got the legend of Hacksaw Jim Duggan on your screen right now, Brian?
He is coming up. There he is. Yep, I got him.
Okay, so I'm going to bring the volume up so you guys can hear Hacksaw speak from the heart. We're going to chill out just for a second. We'll let Hacksaw jump in, and then we'll chat.
I've been coming down to the ring for almost 20 years now, just carrying a flag and a board. Nothing real fancy, Dan. And I'm one of the guys that made this business what it is today. Doing 3,000 miles a week with 5 other guys in the car, doing 9 cities in 7 days, wrestling with a broken finger or a broken nose, because in the old days, if you didn't work, you didn't get paid.
I can see in his face right now.
But I get no respect. The people that write for the magazines and the sheets, they always want to take shots and blast Hacksaw and guys like myself. But that never mattered to me, because every time I came through that door, everybody in the arena stood up and cheered USA and gave me a home. And a lot of guys are proud of a lot of things in this business. Some are proud of their movies, some are proud of their commercials. But what Hacksaw Jim Duggan is proud, when I put my arms around my dad and tell him I love him. When I walk into church on Sunday morning with my 2 little girls' hands, Celia and Rebecca's, in mine. When I look into the eyes of my wife, Deborah, for 14 years, who stood by me, I'm proud of that. And by God, I'm proud of carrying the flag of the United States of America. But I need something now that I never thought. I need help from y'all. Because just very recently, I went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with cancer. And nothing else seems important to me right now. I just don't want to leave my little girls alone. So this week I go under the knife, and God willing, the cancer will be removed. I just want to tell you folks, when you go to bed tonight, hold your children a little closer, because God, they're important. And please do me a favor. Say a prayer for my family. Say a prayer for me. Because God willing, I'll overcome this adversity. And God willing, I'll come back. I love you all very much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for everything. God bless you.
That's the realism coming in,
Wow. Honestly,
Yeah.
this is. Woo! I didn't think it'd get
Amazing.
like that because I've watched this. I've watched this week to
Yeah.
research this show, and this
Yep.
was nearly 30 years old. And as a professional wrestling historian, fan, broadcaster, still gets me
Yeah.
every time. And I don't think unless you truly appreciate the beauty of professional wrestling and sports entertainment, that it can take you on a journey. It can make you laugh. It can make you excited. It can put you on the edge of your seat. But when you see something like that, that is very, very real, that makes you emit a great deal of emotion. And to Hacksaw, who I saw last week here in Manchester.
Oh, wow. Okay. Great.
Oh,
He's loved worldwide, internationally. I mean, fans love Hacksaw, and with good reason. He's such a great guy, in and out of the ring, and so glad he's still with us. Absolutely blessed to have him.
yes. Long live Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I don't want to get too involved in that particular segment. It is
Sure.
a tear jerker. So let's go on. But just massive, massive love for the legend that is Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Absolutely.
We're going to go to another legend that's in the ring right now. Your former tag team partner, Chris Kanyon.
Yeah.
There he is, Mortis. Do you think he was more comfortable being himself in the Kanyon persona or under the mask of Mortis?
I've thought about that. When he was Mortis, we did travel together. Me, Kanyon, and Vandenberg for a little while. And there's some stories I can go to, some classic road trips that I will share down the line that you guys are going to love. But I'll say that to answer the question, I think at times Chris was very comfortable with the Mortis mask. And then he starts to break out of the shell, so to speak, and take this next level, bring up his intensity. Because before he was really hiding behind the mask, so to speak. And now he's actually showing his face, letting people hear him talk. And yeah, Chris had a little bit of a lisp,
I thought that added to it.
I did too. As it grew, I agree. Chris was from Sunnyside, Queens, Astoria, New York, and so yeah, it just sort of all worked for him at this next stage of his career.
Whenever I see him on screen, he always makes me smile. He was a true pioneer of offense. He was always coming up with new moves.
Yeah.
And the way that he carried himself in the ring was incredible, as we see Saturn carrying a Lodi rule sign down to the ring. And Chris is giving it him some. But it'd be difficult to be in this situation. We've just talked about him being under the mask and whether he was more comfortable in certain situations.
Yeah.
I know there's a whole Dark Side of the Ring episode dedicated to Chris, and we love him. We send it out all our love into the world, and God bless Chris Kanyon.
Yep.
How in 1998 was Chris dealing with his sexuality? How was it to be backstage with him? Was it very tough for him? Was he living a different life? How was it with Chris in 98?
Yeah, Chris really, in my opinion, in the interactions and time, like I said, I traveled with Chris. There were times that we trained together all the time as far as ring time, working on the Wrath and Mortis characters to, of course, get the whole blood runs cold angle out there and up and running. But yeah, Chris was definitely living a double life at the time, and just really, he actually went the extra mile to cover it basically, to hide it. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yep, sure did.
And I'm so glad that we're in a world now where people don't have to cover it; they can be themselves. They can open up, and they are welcomed with open arms. So we are sending nothing but love upstairs.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, innovator of offense. Some of the things that we came up with were a first that some guys I still see doing today. So I mean, yeah, Chris, all the credit to Chris. But yeah, we we really did as a tag team. We really had some good stuff together too. So absolutely love working with Chris.
You did. And obviously we're going to come to that as the series continues.
Sure.
Did you see that spot there with Chris's thumb in the turnbuckle?
Yeah.
That was brutal, man. But that's what Saturn offered. I mean, Saturn had been not long over from ECW, probably about a year at this particular point, over with Raven's Flock, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing Scotty in some capacity any minute now, because Saturn is going to be calling out for Lodi, he's going to be calling out for Raven, he's going to be calling out for the entire flock, and you'll be seeing them on your screen in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They will appear. There they are. So you have a lineage as well with one Mr. Levy, in the fact that Johnny Polo brought Adam Bomb to the WWF. What was it? What was the differences between Levy in '93 and Levy in '98?
Oh, a lot different. His character behind the scenes, he was still his happy-go-lucky, love to laugh and talk the business 24/7. But these characters, of course, a lot different, sort of night and day kind of look with these two. Because he was a rich, spoiled kid as my manager, which again, another thing we'll go into down the line, but we can go over those stories of why that was not a good fit. But yeah, here as Raven, he had perfected this character in ECW and then just sort of brought it over to WCW.
I think he fit into a spot in ECW as a cult leader.
Yeah.
That they needed that talent in that position at that time, and he was an absolute perfect fit. Inside the ring, outside the ring, on the microphone, with the people he was working with, on offense, on defense, in the back. He was hitting at all cylinders. Went to WCW, was coming in major angles with the flock. Again, another legend that isn't talked about enough in our industry. And this is another point with our show. We do want to shine that spotlight on talent that isn't talked about enough. So big props out to the legend that is Raven. What about Saturn? How was Saturn with you guys?
I enjoyed working with Perry. Former shout out, he was former military veteran, just like myself. So big shout out there. Yeah, Perry was fun to work with. Again, the guy that was innovative, liked to work snug, and I enjoy that style myself. And yeah, but very talented. Just a matter of him getting that character over at the time, and it took him a little while to get it. I felt like he had it better in ECW than he did in WCW, just the way I was seeing it.
I agree. He had the emphasis of being a tag team wrestler. The emphasis, he had the beauty of being a tag team wrestler with John Cronus in ECW, and I think that really added to it for Perry. But he was a radical. He hit the WWF hard. And for someone as a fan watching in 2000, we all thought that Perry was going to be in that Chris Benoit spot. Unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition. But another legend that isn't talked about enough, and we will be highlighting him more as the show goes on. For another, this show is laden with talent, even if it's not mainstay in the ring. That is a talent on the gridiron. Take a look at Steve Mongo McMichael right now. Does the phrase "too much too soon" ring true for this gentleman?
Yes, because Mongo, again, playing football at the college level, and then of course going into the NFL for I think a 13-year career. Unbelievable. Super Bowl champion, has the natural charisma. People don't give him credit for that, but yeah, he needed more time in the ring, more time on the road, and that's something that unfortunately you can't just fast forward and get it. It takes those reps, it takes that time in the ring, working in front of live audiences to get that polish. And speaking of polish, there's no one that's more polished than Mr. Perfect.
He is, and this is a slant on you, Brian, but Kurt was my all-time favorite wrestler. He always was. Heel or babyface, Kurt just exuded confidence on the screen. His in-ring was untouchable. His look, his physique. I mean, look at him here. He's ripped, he's shredded. And he was next level. But you talked about earlier about being on the road with Kurt. He is known as one of professional wrestling's most incredible ribbers. Did you experience that at all?
Nothing ever against me personally. No, I got along with Kurt very well. Yeah, he was always part of a rib, or at least getting one started and helping it along in the stages. But I love Kurt, man. I really did. And just what a great talent. He looked like $1 million. And a lot of people don't think that Kurt really took pride in how he looked. I mean, when he's walking out to the ring and he shows you a lat pose or he shows you his abs, that's on purpose. He's like, hey, look at me. Look how hard I'm working and look how great I look. That's Kurt. Very competitive.
And this is 98. Kurt had already retired once in 91. This was 7 years after that, and he is looking perfect. And he's carrying the match here with Mongo, but Steve seems to be following everything that needs to be done. Kurt is taking the offense as well as selling the leg, which is quite a unique thing to be able to do, is be able to sell something while giving offense as well. So he's double ending it. He's showing that Steve's given him that offensive. He's giving him those blows in there. Whilst I'm watching him wrap his legs around this ring post right now.
Yeah.
He's just intense, isn't he? Was he a great fit for the NWO? We mentioned it. It was in a single line before. Did he hit it, or would he have been a better Horseman at this time?
I think he fit well with the black and white. I do. Just his charisma is just overflowing, and again, with him being in such phenomenal shape, and again, I know how hard he worked at it. I think it was a good fit for this. Again, as things were to break up later on down the line, there's a million different directions they could have went with Kurt, and he would have been able to pull them off. Yeah, because he's that talented.
He can do anything. I mean, look at him there. That was a definite rib. He's picking up Mongo by his ponytail right there and just holding it high up. There, you know. It were about a year apart from the big Horseman turn where he crushed Flair in the head in the cage match at Fall Brawl. That was an epic scene. So we're about a year away from that. In the future from that. And right now he is dominating the NWO. He's taking it on. But if you're listening to the crowd, and we might bring the audio up for this, because you've got very, very loud "We want Flair" chants. The Horsemen, they needed to come back at this time. WCW needed a big faction to battle against the NWO Hollywood, NWO Wolfpack. The Horsemen were the right decision. From a wrestling fan's perspective, and this is Bryan as a wrestling fan, who are the best Horsemen?
Best of all time?
All time Horsemen.
Well, I mean, I think you would have to say Flair. I mean, but there were. Are you saying as a group?
Yeah, as a group. So you could put any of the four.
Oh, okay. I would go with. I would say Flair, Arn, Tully, and Wyndham.
Yes.
That's just me, Yeah. That's another guy I think that doesn't really get the credit is Barry Windham. What a great worker. He was the guy that I watched back when I was in college. I was watching him going on, because we were both 6'6". So I was looking at those kind of things,
I think Barry, again, definitely not on the same scale as Mongo, but just because he was so slick and so smooth in the ring, that world title came very quickly after his debut. It was only maybe like 3 or 4 years after he debuted is when he was given the beautiful accolade of the NWA World Champion. Maybe a little bit too soon. Maybe it should have been just nurtured a little bit more. But Barry, what a sensational in-ring performer. As we see, Arn Anderson running to the ring. Now he's getting the biggest pops
Oh yeah.
of the night right now. And we've seen Hogan in a heel position. We've seen all sorts of different iconic talent. Arn is over like Rover right now, and that's without his Glock. But he has got a big piece of wood. Arn Anderson. Tell me a little story about Arn.
I love Double A, man. What a great guy, in and out of the ring. Just so much knowledge that he can pass on to everyone. And of course, he's got his son in the business now, which is great. But yeah, always got along with Arn. Always a true professional and a hard worker, man. Could work a body part like nobody's business. And if he needed to go 60 minutes, he could go 60 minutes. And that's on a heavy schedule as far as like 300 days out of the year. I mean, like when he was in the WWF as part of the Brainbusters, man, that schedule was grueling. I think it was even more dates on the road than when I got in there in 93. I was doing almost 300. I know they were probably doing 300 plus,
That's
it's insane
when you think about it, isn't it? I mean, you look at what today's schedule do, and it's more about mental health, well-being, family. To be on the road for over 300 days, wow, that is grueling. That's almost as grueling as the intense pressure that was just on that stretcher that wheeled out Mongo. But Arn's now on the mic. He's addressing the fans. He's addressing Eric Bischoff, who we're going to see storm the ring momentarily. We're talking about the reunion of the Horsemen. That's what everybody in this time was just begging for. But Flair was still in a lawsuit against WCW. It was a massive, massive deal. In fact, we've taken some notes from certain Mr. Meltzer and his Wrestling Observer newsletter at the time. Let me read these out to you. We'll talk a little bit about Flair's current 1998 lawsuit with WCW. So, as we're up to right now, let's take a look. So, where are we in my notes? There we go. So, apparently, Flair requested a little bit of time off, and there we go. Let me read this verbatim, and then we know.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. So, unless things change, Ric Flair is still scheduled to return next week. So it was actually the following Monday Nitro after this show that Flair brought back the Horsemen. As of press time, neither Flair nor WCW have dropped their lawsuits against each other. Flair is still trying to get a judge to rule his contract is voided so he can at least negotiate with the WWF. Although the odds of him going there aren't as good as one would think, after both The Undertaker and Triple H made comments about him being too old, which reportedly upset Flair. That must have been devastating for the man. I mean, and you consider how much they revere him when he does go over. Imagine being Flair and hearing that these two icons are saying you're too old. Eric Bischoff was on a radio show this week and had this to say about the situation. He, as in Mike Mooneyham of the Charleston Post-Courier and the Wrestling Observer hotline, in response to an article about the situation favorable to Flair, doesn't know the whole story. He doesn't know the fact that Ric Flair had agreed that any time that Ric Flair ever wanted any time off, that the request had to come in writing so that we would have the opportunity to schedule his time off accordingly. His agents are being deposed next week and will testify to that. Ric Flair took time off that he never asked for, that he wasn't scheduled for, and put WCW in a bind. I had to make a decision. I had to draw a line and say, okay, am I going to let Ric Flair get away with this so that another 130 people that I have under contract realize that at any time they don't want to show up for a show, they can basically stick it to WCW and no show? Or do I draw a line and make people realize that there's policies, there's procedures, there's agreements, and this is a business, and we have to act professionally and responsibly. And I drew the line on Ric Flair because Ric Flair, in my opinion, and according to his agreement and the agreement that we had with his agents, acted unprofessionally and irresponsibly, and I had to draw the line. It's unfortunate because Rick is a big talent name, and he's a guy that could have continued to contribute. But unfortunately, we're not seeing eye to eye with regard to that subject. What do you think? Were you around at this time with Flair? How was tension off screen between Bischoff and Flair? This must have been really sort of walking on eggshells.
Well, there was definitely tension between the two, and I can sort of see both sides of it. I think I could be wrong. I think that Rick was taking some time off to maybe be at his son's wrestling tournaments and those type things, if I'm not mistaken. I totally 100% understand that, but I also understand the side of Eric is the boss. Eric is running this show, and Eric is looking out for 160 or 70. I think it was more than that numbers of talent, and having to listen to each talent's concerns, especially if they are right in the mix at the time. So I think that, I don't know, it's a tough one. It really is, as far as picking a side, because I really wouldn't want to pick a side, but I'd understand Eric's
side. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely understand where Eric's coming from and saying that, hey, if I do not, like you say, draw the line, then I'm going to have 15 to 20 more that I got to deal with.
It's going to be anarchy. You're going to have.
Yeah, you can't have that. There's already enough of those type issues. We didn't need any more.
No.
So I get it.
Well, Arns just wraps his hands around Eric's neck, feeling that statement that he's just made out. I've just taken a look at that right there.
Yeah.
But how good was Eric on screen? Doesn't he just pop every time? I mean, this isn't a suck up to Eric. I mean, I think he's phenomenal, but just look at it. Every time he's on screen, he makes it count. He makes it matter.
He's selling. Yeah. I mean, he sells great. Eric, still friends with Eric to this day. I think he's a great human being just to start with, but as an actor, as a worker, as part of this business, as being the leader of the NWO and WCW prior to that, all of that comes together, and he brings it on the screen each week. I mean, he's the guy you want to punch him right in the head. I mean, he brings that much. He gets that much heat. That just shows
what you want. That's what you want from your heel, right?
That's
what you want to reach through the screen and grab.
Yes, that's what you want. If you're not getting that, then that's just another guy out there with a microphone. Who cares? Who cares? But Eric makes you really want to go after him. He does.
It must have been really difficult for him as well, being in the position that he was in as an executive, and then being in such a pivotal mainstay main event spot as an on-screen talent. That must have been really tough. Do you remember who was writing the shows at this time?
I think it was always a group of people. I'm sure that Eric had more say as far as his segment and what they were going to do, and what Hogan would have a lot of say as far as his segment. So I think each person had a lot to do with their own segment, but as a group, I still think it was a group decision. Maybe not a final decision, but at least a group effort. That's what I was remembering.
Did you ever truly one-on-one experience the phrase, "That's not going to work for me, brother"?
No, I did not. No.
It's one that lives in infamy. It's one that
if I were to
everybody
look him in the Meltdown, he's going to say, "That's not going to work for me, brother." But I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. I'm going to go ahead and melt Hogan down. Just say it.
Yeah.
I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it in the universe.
Well, we love it. We don't want to touch on any political spectrums, but I think there's a lot of people that would like to see you hit that meltdown on Hogan right now. And we're going to end it right there on that spot.
There you go.
So we're looking at it in this perspective. That segment's just ended, and they've just announced that the next week on Thunder, Eric Bischoff and Arn Anderson are going to meet in an arm wrestling contest to determine the fate of Ric Flair's wrestling career. Now, this is a really difficult situation. We're going to talk about Lodi, who's going to come on your screen in a second. But this is a double booking show. So they booked this week and the following week in this particular show. However, there was a pay-per-view in the middle. That must have been really difficult to handle, right? Because everything had already happened. You've seen champions change. You've seen the War Games match. You've seen Flair actually come back. But none of that happens before you film it. How tough is it to do a double shot?
Well, that's where you really have to pay attention. And ideally, you would do this in a different city. So it's really not great for rebooking that town anytime soon, honestly. But there are some situations and circumstances where that happens, where you have to do that just because of scheduling and commitments and those things. So you do, I mean, a lot of times, for example, WWF, we would have 6 or 7, 8 hours of television tapings, let's say in Poughkeepsie, New York, or wherever. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's not the ideal situation, but at times you have to do it. As far as double, splitting a book in between a pay-per-view PLE. Yeah.
Unfathomable to me to be able to hold it.
Got to pay attention. Got to pay attention.
Pay attention. And speaking of paying attention, just before we segue onto the British Bulldog and Jim Neidhart, who are going to be making their entrance, Lodi's just pulled a fish out of his tights.
Was that a fish or a trout?
It'll have been a sea bass. It'll have been a shark, if you ask Lodi.
I think he had sea bass. Yeah, kick his ass, sea bass. I think that's what he had. Yeah.
Who's that? Now, is that down to Lodi? Is someone put that in his head, or is that this a kind of creative control that you had in the 90s to be able to just run with something?
Well, on little things, if it's a good suggestion, I think that Eric and others, Kevin Sullivan or whoever it may be at the time, were open to it. For example, I thought that was a great idea. I mean, he comes in with like the swamp water, mud all over him,
seaweed, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that I would say that Raven had something to do with that, without a doubt. I could see that's a Scott Levy thing right there with the fish, no doubt.
Scott Levy trademark fishing.
Yeah. In a good way, though. I mean, hey, I thought it was hilarious.
Now, he'd be one that we'd love to have as a guest. And as I've just dropped that out of my mouth, this is something that we are going to be looking forward to as our show progresses, in that we are going to be inviting guests that actually lived the shows that we're reviewing on the WWE Vault and the WCW channels on YouTube onto the Meltdown to give their unique perspective. So make sure you stay tuned and let us know as well if there's anyone that you favored back in the day that you would like to see make an appearance.
Very good. I like that, because yours truly will be at WrestleCon very soon, and I'm going to be reaching out to a lot of those superstars, former world champions that we could bring on here to the Meltdown, with Tom all the way over in the UK, me here in the US, and we will just meet in the middle. And who knows, we could have another face right in here with us to talk it over. Absolutely.
Just a nice little third screen voguing it up. Well, you mentioned that you're going to be at WrestleCon this coming week. It's WrestleMania week. It is the biggest week of the wrestling calendar, and it's why we're making our debut this week, as we see our brand new Hall of Famer Lex Luger going absolutely crazy in the ring with the Bulldog. WrestleCon. Talk to us about WrestleCon. You're looking forward to meeting all the wonderful fans and signing some autographs, getting some incredible pictures.
Yes, I've got already people reaching out to me, US and Europe and UK and all over. People are wanting to their first chance to actually meet me, which is great. I'm very humbled by that. I'm very blessed to be able to see the fans and meet the fans, who have followed my career, supported me through my entire journey throughout my pro wrestling career, and even post career with all the other projects I've got going on. So like I said, I'm very thankful for that. And I'm excited, man. It's really good. I'm going to get to reconnect with a lot of my former colleagues. Like I said, a lot of legends that we're going to be touching base with. And Tom's got his wish list that he wants me to get ready and line them up for the Meltdown, which it will happen. And we have a list for really good, super talent that you're going to love. So stay tuned.
Cannot wait. So if you guys are in Vegas, WrestleMania, you've got to check out WrestleCon. Come and see the man, the myth, the legend, the 3-time tag team champion of the world, the one and only Bryan Clark. And speaking of talent, you're going to be meeting some absolute icons. I myself I'm going to be meeting one tomorrow. I'm going to have coffee with Mark Marrow and our very good friend, Mr. Ben Veal. Yeah, he's on a bit of a tour of Manchester. We're going to meet up in the afternoon, have a little coffee, have a little chat, and hopefully we're going to see the Marvelous One on the Meltdown very, very soon. Speaking, there we go. Let's throw those fists up for him.
Hey, that's Mr. Hey, he's a Golden Gloves champion, man. That Mark Marrow is something else, man.
He is a beast. I met him about 18 months ago, and what a nice guy.
Oh,
he's just
class act. I'm very excited. His book went to #1 recently. It's called From Bad to Good, and yeah, he's a great guy. Does such great work out in the community around the world, honestly, and is reaching a lot of people with very good positive vibes. Just putting a lot of good out in the universe.
We love Mark Marrow. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And yes, make sure you check out his book, From Bad to Good, co-written by our good friend, Mr. Ben Veal. You can get that on Amazon or on Inside the Ropes. Speaking of Inside the Ropes, we can see that Lex is struggling a little bit to get the big Anvil up there in the torture rack.
Yeah.
Did you ever have that situation with the Meltdown? Was anybody really awkward to get up in the Meltdown?
Well, obviously, the bigger they got, the more difficult it was to do.
Mm-hmm.
I got Ming Haku in it. He was about 330, I'm guessing at the time, 325, 320. Yeah, 325, 330, that neighborhood. I remember in the back, we were at the MGM Grand Hotel where Halloween Havoc is held every year. And a lot of the boys in the back didn't think I could do it. So more incentive for me to make it happen. But yeah, to answer the question, the bigger they got, it was more difficult to pull off. But I understand how Lex would have some troubles with Big Anvil, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about that with Meng. I bet that was a sellout of the monitor. I bet that was a sellout of the curtain. I bet they were all watching. I bet they were all. He's not going to do it. He's not.
I think I had some people that had bet that there's no way he can do this.
And I guarantee it will have been Perfect or Bulldog that will have been taking those bets. I guarantee it, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at this. Bret Hart's come out to help Lex against his family members, which is a bit nonsensical to me in storyline. I had no idea why they did this. Bret is a part of NWO Hollywood's team. He's come to support an NWO Wolfpack member. There was no tag team partner for Lex, which to me shouted that there was nobody on the Wolfpack side, even though Konnan and Kevin Nash and Sting were all in the building at this time. That was nonsensical booking for me. Didn't understand that at all. Was that a problem from the talent? We were just talking about keeping on track of things all the time, and reaching back as well. I mean, we just experienced that. But Wrath had a WCW TV title match that just went to a complete count-out weird schmoz finish, and it was never mentioned again. Yeah. Was this something that was a big sticking point with talent where you were constantly asking why?
At times I would say yes, but like for example Bret, I'm sure I would guess that Bret had creative control somewhat like Hogan had creative control, and so when that happens, that sort of trickles down to, okay, so if he's going to say, hey, that ain't going to work for me, brother, then that also affects the chain, and so then you've got to readjust, and sometimes at the last minute readjust the booking of the show. And I think that happened a lot, unfortunately. So that's sort of the cause and effect there,
and it's the old adage of too many cooks spoils the broth, and when there's too many chiefs in that writing room, someone's going to cock up somewhere, because not everybody can be that tippy top guy, unfortunately. Speaking of tippy top guys, we were just talking about Meng. He's got to be one of the tippy top guys when it comes to being the most feared man in professional wrestling. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
There was a little hesitation there, Brian.
No, there was no hesitation. I was just trying to think of how I'm going to put it over correctly, because I love working with him. We worked, again, the very stiff snug style.
Yeah.
And we would throw some haymakers. I mean, really throw some bombs, so to speak, at each other, but always professional. Love working with him. So yeah, nothing but respect for him. And everyone in the business honestly has such good respect for him because he's such a nice guy and a sweetheart of a human being outside of the ring.
Yeah.
You know, and that makes all the difference in the world. He's humble. He's just approachable. I still stay in contact with him even to this day. So yeah, man, another guy that, hey, we're going to get a monster on this show.
Mm-hmm.
That's a monster that is real.
Well, the stories that have been told about Haku Meng over the years have been legendary. So let's put that emphasis to you as we see Konnan making his way out. If you were in a bar, New York City, a lot of Marines walk into this bar and they're looking across at the professional wrestlers and they're thinking, we can take them. We can take them. And there was yourself. There's Meng, and you can pick another 2 guys to have your back to get you out of that bar. Who would you pick? 2 guys. You and Meng, and who else?
Brian Adams.
Of course.
And yeah, that's the guy that's always had my back. And Ravishing Rick Rude.
Wow. Rick's always packing. He's a good one to have.
Hey, he's a Navy SEAL.
He was legendary. I mean, I was watching
Brian Adams, also a former military veteran, myself, and Haku Ming. I mean, I'll take that team.
Those boys ain't gonna know what.
I'll be proud to be a part of that team. Yes, we can go ahead and do a thumbnail of that right now, and let's send that out.
Let's get that. You're going to be seeing this on your reels, on your TikTok timelines very, very soon.
When we do Survivor Series, we can say, okay, who you got against these 4 guys?
The thing is, if you were in that kind of situation, even on the basis of that doesn't work for me, brother, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
And what people need to think about is that the platoon of Marines, not one, but the entire platoon.
I think personally that when Rick jumped back over to WCW at the end of '97 and aligned himself with the NWO, I'm sure that was a Hoganism because Hogan didn't want to be on the other side of things. Rick was sort of trying to get himself out that Lloyd's of London policy in a similar situation to what Kurt did. But Hogan didn't want to face Rude. There was no program in the WWF, which there should have been. There was no on-screen touching, and I'm sure that's because he knew it just the smallest thing, and Rude could have taken him. So, Anyway, sorry. Let's get back to the show.
Hey, we're on good stuff, man.
Love that. Well, we see the Disco Inferno right now. He is taking on the NWO Wolfpack's Konnan. There's been these guys currently host their own podcast, Keeping It 100. They have done for a long time. And Cody Rhodes isn't always the biggest Disco Inferno fan. He's had some very unsavory things to say about him on social media. How was Disco backstage? Was he always lobbying to just be in a clique? How was Disco?
He was just a natural heat seeker, and he knows it. I mean, I thought who we just mentioned a minute ago, we were doing some TV tapings down in Orlando, and I remember him getting a lot of heat from Ming Haku. So I thought he was going to just goozle him right there, but Disco talked his way out of it. But yeah, he's funny and he's entertaining, no doubt. But yeah, he would naturally get some heat on himself, just by some of his antics. He just couldn't help it. He couldn't help himself,
Is that the situation sometimes where there's personalities that are just a little bit too much and will push others to the point?
Yeah. And there were times where he should have just not said anything and just shut his mouth and he couldn't help himself. But that's his character. That's him, He really hasn't changed. Again, not burying him at all. He's just funny. It's just him, and he doesn't know when to tone it down at times.
No, just a unique character, and that is what the wrestling world is full of, unique characters.
Of course, yeah.
From tough guys to legitimate hard men to great camera personas, to people who are great on the microphone, to just funny guys. It's wonderful to have a complete family, a full smorgasbord, to take one out.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said that better. That is exactly what you just said there, because it takes so many different types of personalities and characters to make it all work. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Well, looking out, we can look at all those crowd signs right now, and just something that I just wanted to mention to you.
Yeah.
Crowd signs were a massive deal in the 90s.
Yeah.
What was that like from a production basis? Was it just a case of just shoot it, it doesn't matter? Were there any signs that you've seen over the years that have just made you pop? Anything that's been completely unique? Anything that's been different? Crowd signs were a massive deal for me growing up. I remember creating them with friends before we used to go to house shows. Yeah, crowd signs. Talk to me about crowd signs.
I love seeing them personally. I mean, I remember seeing Wrath, WRATH with the signs and different stuff throughout my career. And some signs I didn't even understand. I was like, I don't know what that means, but it obviously meant something to them because they took the time and effort to make it, whether it was about me or someone else or whatever. But yeah, I always thought that was really a cool thing for, to let the fans really be a part of it.
It's a great visual as well that I don't think
yes,
enough a day of.
Yes.
So if you're watching, you're going to WrestleMania this weekend, take a sign, people. Take a sign.
Yes.
Do it. Make it a Tony Schiavone sign.
There you go.
Tony right now in that ring. Who's dressing Tony Schiavone at this time? My goodness me. Well, Tony's going to bring out one of the all-time best talkers in the history of professional wrestling, someone who I had the pleasure of meeting personally just before he passed away, and I had a great time reminiscing on some wonderful storylines, sharing some love with the late, great Roddy Piper. Piper, his own man. Was he very similar to yourself, Brian? And would you consider Piper a lone wolf?
I think so. I don't ever remember him traveling with any of the other guys at the time. And maybe because he was a little older, I don't know if that was the situation or the reasoning behind that. Hard to say. I didn't really spend a lot of time with him, but everything was always a professional interaction between us. I didn't really get to know him that well, though. I wish I would have, because I was a lifelong fan of his work. I always thought whether a face or a heel, it didn't matter. He really could get everything he needed to across on the mic. So I thought it was excellent on that.
Just looking at him as he looks out into the crowd, just the raising of his eyebrows, just the way that he just commands an audience.
Yeah.
Stands in a ring, his stance, and the "may I" taking the microphone from Tony.
Yeah.
Oh, he is so classic. And he's been retired from full-time in-ring competition for such a long time. I mean, ultimately, he retired like full-time in like 1987, did various spots in the WWF where he'd come back for like 4 or 5 months, dropped back out again, came back to WCW in the fall of 96, and has been just doing various spots up until this particular point. But he is hitting on all cylinders at all times. Roddy was one of my all-time favorites, and I had the pleasure of being petted by Roddy Piper. He was a petter. He was. He liked stroking people. What an icon. The T-shirt said it all. And about this time, we're seeing a three-way dance in the Fall Brawl War Games cage. It's going to be NWO Hollywood, NWO Wolfpack versus Team WCW, consisting of Roddy Piper, Diamond Dallas Page, who we are about to see in the worst lighting possible. You can talk to me about the laser pens when they fly up. And the Ultimate Warrior. Now, I'm not sure when the time is going to come again to talk about the Warrior, but he has come over to WCW to engage in an epic feud. He's got to reignite that flame of the Warrior versus Hogan. that should have died out in 1990. Do you think that Hogan brought Warrior in to get that win back?
If you look at it and you look back at it and you know the history, then you would probably say possibly. Possibly that was the motivation. But then again, are they trying to recapture some of that WWF glory and bring that into WCW, when at the time the NWO was doing so well that they really didn't need it?
They didn't need it.
So that's when you ask yourself, okay, so why is he bringing him back in? Of course, he was a worldwide entertainment mecca. I mean, he was over like Goldberg over, if not even more so. When his music hit, boom, Warrior was, always in great condition. And, it makes you wonder why he was brought in. Yeah.
So from you being in the dressing room at this particular time, was he still getting the crowd reactions within WCW that he was getting in the WWF?
No.
Had he lost any steam? No, or he had?
Well, not necessarily on, due to anything on his behalf. I just think that he had been away for a little while, and sometimes when you're away, if you don't help come back and really build that steam back up, and I'm not sure they built it up enough, at least in the right way. As far as like Hogan in the dressing room and seeing a reflection in the mirror, that's not enough. You really need to do more than that on the production side of it, and then even on the booking side of it, make it stronger. If that's what you're going to emphasize, I think you got to make it a lot stronger than that.
It would probably have been more of a benefit to him if it was handled a little bit different. But I think we're going to go back to that old adage of there were too many cooks in that kitchen. There were too many chiefs that were all vying for that top line. And I think you're trying to inject someone who is a megastar, as you've just said, into a situation where there is a trillion megastars.
Yeah.
What was he going to do? But speaking of him, his entrance was very unique in WCW, in so much as there was all the smoke, the fanfare in the ring, the big hisses, up and out the trapdoor, and he was in there. And that trapdoor played a very pivotal role in the injury process for quite a few talent, including our British Bulldog, our very own England boy. In fact, he was born about 12 miles away from where I sit right now. Goldberg, Warrington. Yes. So we're sending out all our love to the Smith family, sending our love to
and his son, by the way, is doing phenomenal in Japan, by the way.
Big love out to Davey Boy Jr.
Absolutely. Congrats. Big time. Congrats, and keep it up.
Harry's an incredible talent. But let's talk about that trapdoor.
Yeah.
How was that laid out in the ring? Was that, because I mean, looking at it, you can't see it. Yeah. Unless you look really, really close. But that was hurting people.
Yeah, I mean, you really had to pay attention and know where it was at, and the place that you were taking bumps, and as you were laying out your match or going over your match in your head, where were you, going to land and try to protect yourself. I mean, as we go through the history here, we will also see the big triple layer cage. I almost fell through that from the top, which is another story, but I got a good one. You didn't even know about this, Tom? So yeah,
I did not know about it.
When you said trap door, that made me think about, wait a minute. Wow. I almost fell through it. And that's something we will get to and probably cover here in our series. But yeah, again, there's always those things that happen that you've got to, try to account for.
Woo! Now that's put the hairs on the back of my neck. They are standing right up right now. I want to hear those stories. I'm sure all our listeners and all our viewers are going to want to tune in for those as we continue in the series of the Meltdown. Well, continuing his way to the ring, he has just strutted out that door. There he is. He's the man. He's Goldberg. Was he the right person to hold that title?
Oh yeah, Bill was a great guy. I love working with Bill. I love working with him in the U.S. and then also over in All Japan, where we were all Japan. All of Japan tag team champions, But yeah, back to Bill. Honestly, great guy. I think we talked about this in one of our previous meetings, and about Bill's respect for the business. Bill, yeah, I think always Bill respected this business. It was maybe not his first true love, which was pro football, and if his career would not have been cut short by a couple of injuries that I'm familiar with, I think that he may have just stayed in pro football. But with him getting into the professional wrestling world, he has so many more lifetime fans that he would ever have had with an NFL career. And even fans that are talking about a comeback to this day. So that just goes to show you the impact of pro wrestling.
Perfect. We will edge that straight in. That is going to be a reel for this week. We love that. Yeah. He was over like Rover. And every time he makes his return, whether it's in the smallest capacities, in the crowd, he does a small spot, as he did recently with Gunther. He is over to the nth degree. He is intense. He is powerful. He commands a crowd. He knows his placement in the ring. He works snug, but he's very, very effective, and he is worth the big money. Bill Goldberg, for me, was definitely the right person to be holding the title at that time. Now, we're going to come up to Kevin Nash because he's the final match on the show. Surprisingly, Goldberg, our world champion, isn't in the final match in the show. Kevin Nash, the booker, is. However, a couple of months after this, Kevin Nash defeats Bill Goldberg to become world champion, breaking his streak. For someone who was also on a big winning streak at this particular time, was that the right decision? I listened to Bobby Heenan in an interview before his untimely passing, and he said one of the reasons that WCW died was because they killed the streak of Goldberg. Would you attest to that?
It's tough to say. And the reason I'm not picking a side, I just think that yes, the streak had to come to an end. The real question is, was that the right time? And that's hard to say, but I personally would have let it go on longer. Mm-hmm. It's different than like an Undertaker WrestleMania streak, where that's a yearly thing. I mean, he could suffer some losses through the year, and it would not tarnish the fact that it's a WrestleMania winning streak. With Bills, of course, you're never going to get that kind of lifespan out of an undefeated streak. Yeah. But it still could, looking at Bill and seeing what great condition he's in, his charisma, his power, it could have went longer. Yeah, I think so. I would go with this saying, I would agree with Bobby that it could have waited for a while.
I completely agree with Bobby's statement. It was something that shouldn't have been done at that time. You look at a recent champion, someone like Roman Reigns, who held that belt for years. I feel like Goldberg should have held that title for years and made the defeat mean even more. Because to wrestling fans, especially with the finger poke of doom that came instantly after it just turned it from something that was so highly regarded and should have been shielded, should have been just held onto, and it was just gone. And it was gone.
And one of my current favorites, Gunther, for example, 666 days as the Intercontinental Champion, NXT Champion, World Champion. I mean, again, it could have lasted a lot. That's just an example of how you can get the run so much longer than what Bill had. So yeah, it definitely could have lasted longer.
I completely agree. And I'm speaking to a 3-time tag team champion. Let's talk about titles while we're on that subject. From the boys' perspective, or from the girls' perspective, are they important? Are they viewed as by some as cherished items, something that they are driven to try and sort of ascertain their steps on the ladder in their own careers, or are they looked at as props from others?
I think it depends on the person that you're trying to put the title on. Sometimes a title can make a person.
Yes.
Other times, talent can go through and never have a title and still be over as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on the title, it's the charisma of the person that's trying to get that title. Will it help elevate them, or do that person doesn't need a title, if that makes sense? The title, it all depends on the talent that you're working with. You know, I think that's the way. Some people really needed a championship, whereas other people never needed a championship. That's what I'm getting at.
I feel you. Just from a traveling perspective, did you guys travel with the actual belts, or were they sort of ring truck based? Were they taken from town to town, or was it a case of you had to carry those bad boys through the airports?
Well, I'm going to speak from our experience. We carried the belts with us just for the fact that there was always some type of media stuff that we had to do, whether it be with the television, radio, whatever it may be. There were media spots that we had. And of course, so we kept the titles with us. But I mean, it was a good thing because it represented the company well. It represented us. We had the titles there. It was a good showpiece. And yeah, we carried the belts with us. Now, not everybody does. It just depends. But for us, we had other commitments outside of the wrestling ring and at the arena that night. So when sometimes we would leave that town, we would fly to somewhere else to do a media spot. So yeah, if you got your champion showing up without the belts, it doesn't look so great.
It doesn't mean as much, does it?
Yeah.
Were they checked in, or were they on carry on?
Oh, always on a carry on. Always, yeah, in our carry on. Yeah.
I bet there have been some faces on some airport staff that have looked.
Oh, and every time when they see it, they loved it. Every time they're going, wow, they would pop.
And this is it. This is the complete unique beauty of the professional wrestling business. Unless you're in that situation, unless you are surrounded by the men and women who contribute to the most amazing show on earth and show them for the true heroes and spectacles that we know and we love, and you're taken into a situation where they don't know, they will pop like Rice Krispies.
Yeah.
We love
that. And it was so hot it's getting back to that level again, if not surpassed it. But at the time, the mid to late 90s, it was red hot, at least more towards the back half of the 90s. And so they knew. So yeah, again, it would just not look right if we didn't have them.
Well, this is a taping of Thunder. We have currently got 11,408 in the Rupp Arena right now. You have got, just for this particular show, a 3.5 Nielsen rating share. For Nitro this coming week, which is Flair's return, they hit a 5.1 on the Nielsen rating scale. They are mega numbers. 98 was on fire. They were on fire. You whooped the WWF's backside this particular season. It was like a complete whitewashing.
Yeah, it was a beatdown.
We like it. It always seemed to be your trend, though, Brian. It was wherever you went. I don't know whether anybody's correlated that before. Wherever you went.
You're the first. You're the first, Tom. You're the first one to get it, man. I never even thought about that, but yeah, I was blessed to be a part of it. Honestly,
I think we need to send a little memo to Mr. Levesque and just remind him at that point. Okay, well, let's carry on from that. We're now into our main event of this particular Thunder that we've been talking all the different flavors around the wrestling world about. And we've got our finale, our grand finale. It's our main event. It's NWO Hollywood versus NWO Wolfpack. It is Kevin Nash versus Stevie Ray, as I see them sat in a rest hold right now. Happy main event.
Yeah.
So what? Stevie is a big, imposing guy. He obviously a brother of Booker T, multi-time tag team champion within Harlem Heat. Was he the right person to put into the NWO Hollywood in a main event picture singles run?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Just because he is known as a tag team, as a tag team wrestler, hard to say, man. I would say no. Just at this point, if you're thinking about the rest of the build, where this is going. But if it's just for Kevin to beat, then it makes sense. So there's two ways to look at it. And as we'll see here, towards the end, that Kevin takes care of both of them, and it helps get his finish over, which it was already over, but it helped more so. A lot of little dipsy doozies here. I see a little.
Have you just seen that?
Reverse, double, triple reverse, which is rare.
Yep. Vince has just missed his spot. Have you seen that? Vince just missed his spot. And Stevie had to take the power bomb. Obviously, he wasn't intended to. Kev got him up anyway. Missed the slapjack spot. Had no idea. As fans, I mean, I don't know. Is this a big thing in the US? Is a slapjack? We've no idea what a slapjack is.
Well, I'm guessing, and I didn't know really until this angle happened and stuff. I'd heard about the slapjack, and it's basically, my take on it is a smaller nightstick, but with some type of lead or something in the end of it. So that's the whole idea of it. Where is that common here? I would say no. You don't hear of anyone talking about it. Even back then you didn't hear anybody talking about it. Even now you don't hear anybody talking about it.
No, it was just a bit of a unique one, a bit of a weird one, as we see Hollywood making his way down to the ring. Just for British fans, we never encountered a slapjack before, and looking at it looks like the sole of someone's shoe.
Yes.
We're looking at it thinking, why is he hitting with a shoe? But hey, hope Scott Hall's just made his return after a number of months away, dealing with his personal demons. And as he's brought back, those personal demons were brought into a very big storyline. In that Scott was drunk on air. He vomited on Eric. Do you think it was too soon?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so, because Scott could have done so much more, and he still did contribute so much more to the business after that. But I think that I personally, if I would have been booking it, I would have passed on that and just worked with his talent versus his demons at the time. That's
he was and always will be one of the most charismatic, fun, entertaining, great in-ring talents. Speak on the mic. I mean, even here on the return, and obviously Nash is his buddy. He's slim for him. He's over like Rover. To bring him into a position where they are highlighting a big negative in Hall's life, I thought was really insensitive. WCW, and from everything that we've learned from Big Boogers over the years is accentuate the positives and hide the negatives. But I feel that they really accentuated Hall's negatives, and nobody won in that situation. So poor Scott. I'm sorry to see that in that situation.
Unfortunately, all the decisions that a booking team or a booking committee are not. Every idea is not a good idea. So you take a shot, you throw it against the wall and see what sticks. But again, sometimes you're taking a chance where it could backfire, and maybe not always the best idea.
Nope. Well, we definitely saw it in this particular instance. There was a world that they could have done with Scott Hall, and
Oh yeah.
unfortunately, I mean, this is from a viewer's perspective. It was pissed up the wall. As we see the NWO walk into the back, we're gonna see the big reveal to close out this particular episode of Thunder. We have been through the mill. I mean, we look at it. That's a 2-hour show. 16 minutes, 50 seconds of professional wrestling in this particular show. It's a big one, Brian. It's a big one.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. As Hulk Hogan makes his way into the locker room, Warrior owns Hollywood Hogan. You're about to see it on your screens. Chaos ensues. Hogan demands the people find who did it. Where's the Warrior? As we close out that episode of Thunder. How were like the different arenas that you went to where things were destroyed or vandalized backstage? How were they with things like that?
I'm sure that they may not have known everything that we were going to do in a certain arena, depending on where we were at and where the storyline was. But that's something that a coat of paint can correct.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there was maybe the bill was sent to the company or to the office. Not a big issue. I've never heard of it being an issue. Honestly.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of your professional sports teams that are coming in and out of these arenas,
yeah.
they're raucous, and rock bands, they do what they do.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's so unique when professional wrestling comes to your town and your cleanup team are in the back with the brooms ready to go, and they walk around the corner. Warrior owns Hollywood Hogan is spray painted on the wall. Unique. There's nothing like pro wrestling.
And with today's product, you could, if that would happen now, you could take a screenshot of it, sell it, put it on the web, and make money off of what was property damage. So
I'm now going to spray paint my house. The Meltdown was here. 2025. Let's sell it. Let's go for it. Just before we wrap up on that wonderful episode of Thunder that you guys can check out either here with us in our small little window or in full glory on the WWE Vault and WCW channels on YouTube. Make sure you go out of your way to check it out live. Just a few little questions, a few little points I wanted to ask you. Just things that happened off screen. So I noticed going through our cage match history as to where you were up to at that particular spot, that about a week after this, after the Fall Brawl pay-per-view, it was a house show where it was the Wolfpack versus NWO Hollywood. And you got inserted into the mix as the Giants tag team partner. Do you remember that show?
I do.
Okay.
I'm pretty good at remembering the cities too. I want to say that was Little Rock, Arkansas. And there was another one, but I don't remember the second city. Was it Memphis?
I've only got one with you and Giant, but you were absolutely bang on. Little Rock, Arkansas. Big tick for Bryan Clark.
I've got a story with that too.
Go. Let's listen.
House show. Okay. We had a run-in from a fan. And usually on a house show, it's just not, usually if that happens, usually someone's looking for some airtime, a little bit of TV time. They think that it will not get edited out, whatever the case may be. A fan hit the ring that night in that tag match. And I remember the Giant, also the Big Show. I just remember the guy came under the ropes, and all the boys know this. We take care of our own in the ring. You never get in the ring, ever. I just remember him reaching down and grabbing this fan and one step and just launches this guy. And he goes all the way over the other side. I was like, wow. It was like a plane flying through the air. Yeah, but yeah, true story. Yeah.
I can see, I can visualize it in my mind.
Yeah, it was just like, yeah. Hey, giant. So now they know, don't run into a pro wrestling ring. It's not going to end up well for you. So.
And there's our next reel.
There you go.
So the question really is, why did they position Wrath, who it was WCW guy, into an NWO Hollywood situation? Was it something where they were testing the ground with you? Was it a case of we needed somebody else within a big heel faction who was also an undefeated character to be then put up against WCW's Goldberg, undefeated character? Was that anything that was ever put to you? Was there ever any talk of bringing Wrath into the NWO?
No, there was never any talk of me going to NWO other than this black and white I'm wearing right now. This is about as close as I got. I think that Wrath, the character Wrath, was much better off. It would get just lost in the mix kind of thing, like a lot of guys did. So that's some of the negatives of being in a big group. So I think personally, there was no talk of it. And also I just felt if I would be asked about it, I think that it would be better off staying where I was at, as far as like on my own little island and then working my way up.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Wrath didn't need it. It was just strange how it was paired. I just didn't understand that. But there were lots of strange things that were going on in the time of 1998. And some you just can't question. Some you just can't fathom. Some I can't believe were actually a thing. So much so, I was looking back through notes. One thing that the WWF did that I can't believe that they got away with, they actually produced a t-shirt that went on sale in stores that said, Austin rules, Goldberg sucks. That actually went into stores. How did they get away with stuff like that?
Desperate times, desperate measures, especially if you're getting hammered in the ratings for such a long time. You got to reach out, and I'm just saying that's just a merchandise aspect of it. That's not an in-ring product of it, but a lot of times, their merchandising was much better than WCW's. TBS was that wasn't their thing. Unfortunately, they should have had much better merchandise but yeah, surprisingly, I'm not really surprised that would be an item for sale from Vince.
I mean, you were a big merchandise guy. We've talked off air about your input, especially during the Adam Bomb days. Was there anything within your time in WCW? Because merch was, as you've just said, merch was not a massive thing in WCW. Was there any talk of having more Wrath merchandise? Was there anything that you brought to the table that you thought this will sell like hotcakes, and they just didn't run with? Why was it like that?
Well, nothing I can really think of with the Wrath character, other than like the basics. I say the basics, but they're huge things. The video games, the action figures, those things were doing well. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, I don't know if TBS was really ready to dive into that part of the market. I don't know if they were seeing it as a big money maker that it really has turned out to be. They could have definitely added and created much more depth in the merchandising side of it. There's so many levels. I could just think back of, right away, Black and White, the Wolfpack. I mean, all the WCW guys. There's a ton of things they could have done in different layers of merchandise to make more profit for the company. And it just didn't happen.
I've got to say that probably, looking at it from a fan's perspective, the original NWO black and white t-shirt must have been the biggest moneymaker from a merchandise perspective. They did that, and obviously they did the Wolfpack t-shirt, and they did sparingly little other bits. They did the Roddy Piper icon, they did the DDP one, and a few little ones. But they should have capitalized. Again, it was just a nail in WCW's coffin, unfortunately. Well, before we put a nice big bow on this particular time in professional wrestling, we're building up and gunging up for Fall Brawl 1998, which would then lead us into Halloween Havoc 98, where you took on that man, that myth, that scary dude. It was Meng time. So it was all going on for you. Let's just cast you back to that particular time, undefeated streak of Wrath, build up towards some big shots. what was it like for you at that particular time? Any final shouts from this nice injection of time in 1998? Anything that holds dear in your heart? Anything that you think should have changed? Any memories from the?
Yeah, it was a great time for me. I had reestablished myself as a singles wrestler. I had created the Meltdown. I had gotten that over in a really short time. So all really good positives. You know, I was excited about it, and again, I would go on for a few months undefeated. So it was really nothing but good memories. Honestly, I hadn't really had any major injuries, and through at that stage in my career, which was a great thing. So anytime you avoid that, you're doing well for yourself. So yeah, I was pleased with the way the projection of Wrath was heading. So yeah.
Well, you gave it to us on a platter, and we took it all in. We loved it. We loved it. Honestly, from a fan's perspective, I was like 15 at that particular time, and we were loving the life of professional wrestling. There were people within my own friendship bubbles who weren't fans, who became fans, and were hanging on every Monday, Thursday, Friday. It was on every day. That we loved it. But as we get about to wrap on this show, we just mentioned the Meltdown. If there was anybody in today's wrestling culture, today's landscape of superstars that you could hand the Meltdown to on a silver platter, who would you pick? Who think deserves to put the Meltdown into their arsenal?
I can think of a few guys, but some that I'm big fans of. I really enjoy their work. Is a Drew McIntyre. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite. Gunther's another guy, another favorite of mine. Both of those guys have great finishes, so they could add it in easily. And then if you went to the AEW side, I'll tell you another guy, WWE guy that I would love to see is Karrion Kross. I'd love to see him use it. I'm just throwing it out there, man. You never know. You got my permission, man. I'd love to see you use it. And then there's some AEW guys that could also it work well in their arsenal. So yeah, there are some guys that could. Hey, it's a devastating move, and the thing is that it is a finisher, so not a false finisher. So
no, there's only been one that we've seen counter it. He is the icon. He is the stinger, and we will be touching upon that as we progress down the line. So you heard it here first. Drew, Gunther, and Karrion Kross, you have the blessing of the Bryan. Bryan, we hope you've enjoyed our first episode. I certainly have. Thank you so much to all our wonderful viewers who have joined us on YouTube, to all our wonderful listeners for listening to us on your favorite podcasting devices. And let us know in your comment section. Please feel free, send us both messages about different shows, different times, different eras of what you'd like to hear and us talk about on the Meltdown. Any particular specific wrestlers that you want to probe Bryan on, tell us. It's what we're all about. We're a fully inclusive show. Let's do this. So next week, Bryan's off shooting to Las Vegas for WrestleCon. So make sure you check him out right there and be back with us next week. He'll be post-Mania. We're going to find out if John Cena, we can see you. From us all here at the Meltdown, thank you so much for joining us on our debut episode. It has been a great pleasure being with you all. My name's Tom Finkill. He is the legend that is Bryan Clark. We will see you next week.
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button right here on the Meltdown. Also, I love to hear your questions. Please give me the comments, the feedback. Hey, we'll start reading them on the air. We're going to have a blast with this, and I mean a atomic blast. So again, join us next week. My man Tom from the UK. We will be breaking necks and cashing checks each and every week right here on the Meltdown. Much love, guys.